Winner is Elden Ring!
Last year, Elden Ring came out and took the world by storm, hitting sales numbers far exceeding other FromSoftware titles by a good margin. And they did so without sacrificing the core of what makes their formula work so well. So how did they do it? They hit a wider audience by understanding the different player motivations and appealing to different player personas without sacrificing their core audience. And that was pretty masterful, and we could all learn a thing or two from it. So in this video, we're going to do just that. I've mentioned player motivations and player personas in a lot of my career advice videos, but to give you a quick rundown, each player has a personality type driven by their different motivators. Different people are motivated by different things. Some value a challenge, others value competition, mastery, creativity, and so on. And lastly, games typically appeal to people differently based on the personas they're designed to appeal to. So for this video, let's think of just two personas. The first is the Chatly Challenger, who indexes heavily on mastery and challenge. And the second is the Eager Explorer, that indexes more heavily on discovery and exploration. If you're curious about your own player motivations, I left a link to the test in the top comment below. Take a test and post a reply sharing what yours is. Here's mine. Okay, now let's go back to Elden Ring. Now when you think of the Chatly Challenger, think of someone that enjoys action and loves a good challenge. These are players that relish in strategizing around how to overcome a challenge and would gladly bash their head against that challenge over and over until they get it done, for that sweet feeling of overcoming the challenge and the journey that got them there. Typically, FromSoftware games are rooted around challenge as a motivator. They are meant to appeal to the Chatly Challenger persona that we just talked about. Now, if you are a FromSoftware connoisseur of sorts, you might point out that these games are really good at establishing rich, compelling worlds that end up appealing to the Eager Explorer as well. Now, the Eager Explorer enjoys novelty, discovery, and getting immersed in a captivating world. They want to climb the highest mountains and delve into the deepest caves and experience all that there is while maintaining that feeling of immersion. The problem is, when an Eager Explorer runs into a challenging boss that hinders their progress, since they aren't really motivated by the desire to overcome the encounter, they usually have nowhere else to go and end up walking away from the entire game. Wolong follows the traditional recipe almost to the letter. You load into a level, you progress forward more or less down a linear path, and eventually you come face to face with your first real challenge. These games usually have this one boss early on that acts as the great filter. To get past them, you have to engage with the mechanics of the game, but more importantly, you have to be motivated by the challenge. Wolong is a great example here because of the first boss you encounter in the tutorial level. It's half-jokingly referred to as the hardest boss in the game, and once you defeat him, the game gets easier. Almost every game in this genre has that first intro boss, but Wolong is just a recent and very clear example of how this works. So wait, what about Elden Ring? Now if you've played the game, you know exactly who that first boss is, and it's good old Margit. You encounter them almost immediately, and they even introduce themselves thematically as this first real challenger, literally barring your progress in a thematic arena until you've proven yourself to be worthy. And when you do, you can move on. Now odds are, most players didn't have what it takes to get past Margit on their first try. But instead of the Eager Explorer putting the game down at this point, as they would have typically done in most other games in the genre, they simply went elsewhere. Here's the catch with Elden Ring. Where most FromSoftware games would have you bash your head against Margit until you either uninstalled the game or beat them, in Elden Ring you have a third option. You can simply go elsewhere. There's a lot to be said about how refreshingly well designed Elden Ring's open world is, but the core nugget I want to emphasize here is that for those players, those eager explorers, where almost every other FromSoftware game shut its doors to them almost immediately, this game actually catered to them. There is even an obscure path that lets you skip Margit entirely, which lets you continue exploring the world. And this path is the sort of thing that the eager explorer is really good at finding and usually enjoys doing so. The stroke of genius here is that by continuing to explore the world, the eager explorers are encountering more threats, gathering more runes, and leveling up more. And so by playing the game the way they enjoy, they are passively getting better. So after exploring the world and seeing all it has to offer, players come back and challenge Margit, and they are likely much higher level than they were before and thusly more capable of dealing with Margit a lot more easily. While browsing through Elden Ring Steam reviews, I read this one review that summarized this point pretty clearly. It said something like 200 hours in and I just beat Margit for the first time. That's the main takeaway here. The game let those players keep playing because really, they were more motivated by exploring the world and not by the challenge the game presented. Bosses were simply obstacles they had to overcome in order to keep exploring. The reason why I think FromSoftware's approach here is worth talking about is that it didn't come at the cost of their core audience. Someone motivated by challenge, which is their core audience, felt like it was still the same game just made better, while at the same time opening the genre up to millions of other players. So there you have it. By comparing Elden Ring to other games in the genre, we hopefully got to learn about the power of learning to appeal to different player motivations in your own game. And in the case of Elden Ring, we learned how they did so without alienating their core audience. So when designing your own games, think of the core motivations that will drive your players forward. And when opening up your genres to try to attract different players, try to think of different motivations that will work in conjunction with your core audience. Thanks for watching, everyone. I've got a few more videos lined up, so if you like what you see here, consider subscribing and leave a like. Until then, I appreciate you all, and I'll see you next time.